Book title: The Silent Agreement. Episode 1: The Man in the Grey Coat. The rain in London had a particular personality. It wasn't a gentle drizzle. It was a relentless, diagonal downpour that attacked umbrellas and ruined suede boots. Ava cursed under her breath, clutching the thin fabric of her useless umbrella as a gust of wind inverted it for the third time. She was late for a client meeting, her portfolio was getting damp, and now this. Just perfect, she muttered, wrestling with the metal ribs. A sudden stillness enveloped her. The rain stopped hitting her directly. Confused, she looked up to find not the clearing of a storm, but the dark canopy of a very large, very sturdy umbrella held by a man in an impeccably tailored gray wool coat. "Yours seems to have declared mutiny," he said, his voice a low, calm baritone that cut through the city's chaos. Ava blinked, pushing a wet strand of hair from her face. He was tall, with sharp, intelligent features, and eyes the color of a stormy sea. He looked solid, unshakable, the kind of man whose umbrella would never, ever invert. "Thank you," she managed, her voice slightly breathless. "It's having a dramatic existential crisis." A faint smile touched his lips. "Happens to the best of us. Where are you headed?" "I'll walk you." It was a statement, not a question, delivered with a quiet authority that Ava, normally fiercely independent, found herself obeying without argument. "The Blackwell Gallery, just on Millbank." "I know it," he said, and they fell into step. For 5 minutes, they walked in a silence that was strangely comfortable. He expertly navigated the crowds, shielding her from the worst of the splashes. Ava stole glances at his profile. He smelled of sandalwood and cold air. He wasn't trying to make awkward conversation, and she found it incredibly refreshing. As they reached the grand steps of the gallery, he handed her the umbrella. "Here, a temporary truce with the weather." "Oh, I couldn't," she protested, but he was already stepping back into the rain, pulling up the collar of his coat. "Consider it an investment in dry art," he said. "You can return it someday." And with a final nod, he turned and melted into the gray tapestry of the city. Ava stood there, clutching the solid ebony handle of the umbrella, feeling a strange sense of loss. She didn't even know his name. Inside the gallery, her client, Mrs. Higgins, was waiting, flustered. "Ava, dear, you're soaked. And what a fine umbrella. Is it new?" Ava looked at the object in her hand, a tangible proof that the encounter had been real. "It's a loan," she said softly, "from a man in a gray coat." Mrs. Higgins's eyes twinkled. "A mystery man? How romantic. Far more interesting than my morning, which involved a cat and a ball of yarn." Ava laughed, but her mind was elsewhere. She had a strange, certain feeling that this wasn't the end. It was a beginning, and she was holding his umbrella, which meant he had a reason to find her again. Or she him. Episode 2: The Architect of Secrets. Liam Thorne didn't do chance encounters. As one of London's most sought-after and notoriously private architects, his life was a series of calculated decisions, precise lines, and controlled environments. The rain, and the woman with the failing umbrella, had been an anomaly, a beautiful, disruptive anomaly. Back in his minimalist office, overlooking the Thames, he tried to focus on the blueprints for a new cultural center in Tokyo. But his mind kept returning to her. Her frustrated laugh when the wind caught her umbrella. The determined set of her jaw. The intelligent spark in her eyes when she'd made the joke about its existential crisis. Most people were boring. She was not. His assistant, Eleanor, buzzed his intercom. "Mr. Thorne, your 3 o'clock is here. A Ms. Ava Reed, to discuss the visual branding for the Haven project." Liam stilled. Ava Reed. He hadn't gotten her name. Couldn't be. He pulled up the file for the Haven Project, a pro bono community center he was designing. The attached portfolio was from a freelance graphic designer. He clicked it open. There she was, not in the rain but in a professional headshot, smiling confidently, and her work was brilliant, bold, emotional, and perfectly aligned with the vision he had for Haven. "Send her in," he said, his voice betraying none of the sudden, uncharacteristic turmoil inside. The door opened, and Ava walked in, her posture professional, her hand extended. "Mr. Thorne, it's a pleasure to—" She stopped. Her eyes widened, moving from his face to the gray coat hanging on the stand behind him, then back to his face. The professional mask slipped, revealing the surprised, flustered woman from the rain. "You?" she breathed. "The Umbrella Mutineer," he replied, a genuine smile finally breaking through his reserve. "It seems our agreement has a sequel sooner than expected." The meeting that followed was a delicate dance. They discussed color palettes, user experience, and emotional resonance with a professional ease that belied the electric current running between them. He was impressed. Her ideas weren't just good. They were perceptive, digging into the soul of his architectural vision. As the meeting concluded, Ava stood. "Well, I suppose this makes returning your umbrella easier." She gestured to the stand where it was drying. "Keep it," Liam said, walking her to the door. "The rain isn't over yet." He paused, choosing his next words with the care he'd use for a load-bearing wall. "But perhaps we could continue this discussion in a less professional setting? Dinner? Tomorrow night." Ava looked at him, the architect of secrets, the man who had appeared and disappeared like a ghost. She saw the intensity in his gaze, the slight vulnerability behind the controlled offer. The professional part of her brain screamed caution. The part that had held onto his umbrella all week screamed louder. "Yes," she said. "I'd like that." Episode 3. The Dinner and the Door. The restaurant was the kind of place Ava usually only saw in movies. All soft lighting, white tablecloths, and a silence that felt expensive. She felt a flutter of nerves, smoothing down the fabric of her simple black dress. Liam was already there, rising to meet her. He looked different out of his work armor, a dark sweater instead of a suit, making him seem more approachable, yet somehow more intensely himself. "The umbrella survives another day, I see," he remarked, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he held her chair. "It's become my most prized possession," she quipped, feeling the tension ease. The conversation flowed as easily as the wine. They talked about art, their shared love for brutalist architecture. "It's so unapologetic," Ava had said, and he'd looked at her as if she'd just recited poetry. Their favorite hidden corners of London. He was witty, surprisingly self-deprecating, and he listened to her with a focus that made her feel like the only person in the room. But there were shadows. When she asked about his family, his answer was brief, clipped. "My parents passed away a long time ago. It's just me." He deftly turned the question back to her, and she found herself talking about her loud, loving, and sometimes overwhelming Italian family. It was perfect, almost too perfect. And then, as they were sharing a dessert, she saw it. The shift. His phone, which had been face down on the table, vibrated. He glanced at the screen, and his whole body went rigid. The warmth in his eyes vanished, replaced by a shuttered, cold look she hadn't seen before. "Excuse me," he said, his voice tight. "I have to take this." He walked away from the table, phone to his ear. Ava watched his broad back, the tense line of his shoulders. The conversation was brief and, from his posture, clearly unpleasant. When he returned, the magic of the evening had shattered. "I'm sorry, Ava," he said, not meeting her eyes. Something urgent has come up. I need to go. Disappointment, sharp and cold, washed over her. Is everything all right? It's fine, he said, the words a clear dismissal. He paid the bill, his movements efficient and distant. He walked her to a taxi, his hand a ghost of a touch on her back. Thank you for tonight, he said, his voice formal. I'll be in touch about the project. And just like that, he was gone again, retreating behind a door she couldn't see and didn't understand. Ava sat in the back of the taxi, the taste of chocolate and confusion bitter on her tongue. The wonderful, captivating man had a trapdoor, and he had just fallen through it. The question was, would he ever climb back out? Episode 4, The Ghost in the Machine. A week passed with no word from Liam. The silence was deafening. Ava threw herself into her work, creating mock-ups for the Haven project, each design feeling more hollow than the last. Her friends told her to forget him, that he was clearly a player or emotionally unavailable. But the memory of their connection, of the man he was before the phone call, felt too real to dismiss. Driven by a mix of heartache and stubborn curiosity, she did something she knew was borderline crazy. She Googled him, properly, beyond his professional website. The results were a torrent of accolades and articles about London's reclusive architectural prodigy. But then she found it, a small archived article from 8 years ago. The headline was a punch to the gut. Prominent architect Charles Thorne and wife killed in tragic car accident. Son sole survivor. The son was Liam. He was 24. The article included a grainy, old photo of a younger Liam, his face a mask of shock and grief outside a courthouse. The brief text mentioned a court case, a wrongful death lawsuit filed by Liam against the other driver, a wealthy socialite named Isabel Croft, who had been acquitted of manslaughter due to lack of evidence. Isabel Croft. The name meant nothing to Ava, but a quick search revealed a woman in her late 30s, glamorous, sharp-faced, and notoriously connected in high society circles. She was the ghost, the source of the phone call, the open wound in Liam's life. Everything clicked into place with a painful clarity. His privacy, his controlled demeanor, the sudden, cold retreat. He wasn't playing games. He was haunted. Just as she was processing this, her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Unknown, Ava. It's Liam. I owe you an explanation that a text can't contain. I'm sorry. The project and our dinner, they are the two most real things in my life right now. Can you meet me? There's a place I'd like to show you. Her heart hammered against her ribs. He had reached out, and he had mentioned the project and their dinner in the same breath, making them equally important. She looked at the photo of Isabel Croft on her screen, then back at his text. He was inviting her in, past the door. Was she brave enough to walk through? Episode 5, The Haven. He didn't choose a restaurant or a bar. He gave her an address on the outskirts of London, an old, disused railway yard. When her taxi arrived, she saw his car already there, and him leaning against it, hands in his pockets. He looked tired, but the walls were down. The vulnerability she'd seen glimpses of was now front and center. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. "What is this place?" she asked. "This," he said, leading her towards a large, derelict brick building, "is the future." He unlocked a heavy side door and ushered her inside. Ava gasped. It wasn't derelict inside. The vast, open space was lit by strategically placed spotlights, illuminating soaring ceilings and beautiful, exposed brickwork. In the center stood a magnificent, intricate architectural model of the Haven Community Center, surrounded by drafting tables, her own designs pinned to mood boards. "This is your office?" she whispered, her voice echoing. "My sanctuary," he corrected. This is where I work on Haven. It felt wrong to design it in a sterile skyscraper. It needed to be here, among the bones of something old, making something new. He turned to her, his gaze intense. Ava, the phone call. The woman was Isabel Croft. She killed my parents. The words hung in the air, stark and brutal. She was driving recklessly, crossed the center line. The courts let her go. Her family's money and influence saw to that. But she has a twisted fascination with me. She calls. She sends letters. She reminds me that she's still here, living her life, while my parents are not. That phone call was her, wishing me a happy anniversary of the verdict. Ava's hand flew to her mouth. Liam, I'm so sorry. I shut down because that's how I've survived. He continued, his voice raw. I build walls, literally and figuratively. But with you, he took a step closer. With you, from the moment I saw you fighting that ridiculous umbrella, I didn't want to build a wall. I wanted to open a door. I am so sorry I slammed it in your face. Tears welled in Ava's eyes. She understood now. The silent agreement they had made under the rain wasn't just about an umbrella. It was a silent recognition of something deeper, a shared understanding that had started before they even knew each other's names. She walked over to the model of the Haven Center, a place he was designing for broken people, for lost children. A project he was doing for free. This was who he was. Not just the wounded man, but the healer. You don't have to open the door all at once, Liam, she said softly, turning back to him. We can just leave it on the latch. For the first time that night, the weight on his shoulders seemed to lighten. He reached out, his fingers gently brushing a stray tear from her cheek. The touch was electric, a promise. In that case, he whispered, his forehead nearly touching hers. Would you like to see the blueprints for the garden? I designed it with your color palette in mind. And in the quiet of the railway yard, surrounded by the ghosts of the past and the blueprints of the future, Ava knew she was already in too deep. There was no turning back. Episode 6. The Cracks in the Fortress. The railway yard, which Liam called the engine room, became their secret world. Evenings melted away as they worked side by side, Ava's vibrant designs spreading across Liam's stark architectural plans like ivy on a concrete wall. He began to talk, slowly, unpicking the stitches of his own silence. He told her about his father's terrible puns and his mother's love for chaotic, sprawling gardens. Ava listened, sometimes holding his hand, sometimes just letting the words hang in the dusty air, giving them space to exist. It was during one of these sessions that she saw the first real crack in his fortress. He was explaining the structural load of a glass corridor when he suddenly froze, his pen stopping mid-sentence. His gaze was fixed on a large, empty crate in the corner. That was her piano, he said, his voice hollow. My mother's. Couldn't keep it. The sound was gone from it. Ava saw the muscle in his jaw twitch. This wasn't just grief. It was a fresh, ongoing pain. The pain of erasing a life, piece by piece, because the memory of it was too sharp to bear. Tell me about the sound, she whispered. He closed his eyes. She played Chopin, imperfectly. She'd always mess up the same note in the nocturne in E-flat major. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. And when she did, she'd laugh and start again from the top. The house was always filled with this looping, beautiful mistake. He opened his eyes, and they were glistening. Isabel Croft doesn't just call on the anniversary of the verdict. She sends me music boxes. That same nocturne, perfectly played. The cruelty of it took Ava's breath away. This wasn't just harassment. It was a surgical strike against his soul. Without a word, she walked over to her bag, pulled out her laptop, and after a few clicks, the soft, melancholic notes of Chopin's nocturne filled the vast space. Liam flinched. "Don't," he said, his voice strained. "Ava, please, turn it off." "Listen," she insisted, standing her ground. She fast-forwarded to a specific part. "Here, this note. Did your mother mess up this one?" He listened, his body tense as a wire. Then he nodded almost imperceptibly. Ava smiled, a fierce, loving smile. "Good. So every time you hear it perfectly, it's wrong. It's not her music. It's a forgery. She is a forgery." Liam stared at her, the storm in his eyes slowly clearing, replaced by a dawning, wondrous realization. This woman wasn't just offering comfort. She was giving him back his memories, armed and defended. She was teaching him how to fight back. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, cupped her face in his hands, and kissed her. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a confession, a release, a promise. It was the sound of a wall, not just cracking, but crumbling to dust. Episode 7, The Gilded Cage. Liam had a business gala, the kind of event he usually avoided but couldn't this time, as it was for a major donor to the Haven Project. He asked Ava to be his date. "I need an anchor," he'd said, "in a room full of sharks." The event was a spectacle of wealth at a Mayfair hotel. Ava felt a twinge of insecurity in her simple but elegant gown, but it vanished the moment Liam's hand found the small of her back. A steady, possessive pressure that said, "You belong here with me." For an hour, it was magical. They were a team. He was more relaxed in public than she'd ever seen him, his smiles genuine, his laughter easy. She charmed his stuffy colleagues with her wit, and he watched her with undisguised pride. And then the atmosphere shifted. A hush fell over a part of the room, followed by a ripple of murmurs. Ava felt Liam's hand stiffen against her back. She followed his gaze. Isabel Croft had arrived. She was a vision in silver, dripping with diamonds that looked more like weapons than jewelry. Her eyes, cold and calculating, scanned the room and landed on them with the precision of a missile lock. She began to glide through the crowd, a predator wrapped in silk. "Liam, darling," she purred, ignoring Ava completely. "You look so, well, it's been too long." Liam's face was a mask of polished stone. "Isabel, still playing with your little building blocks for the poor?" she asked, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. "It's so noble of you to try and fix things. Some cracks, of course, run too deep to ever be properly filled." Her eyes flickered to Ava for a fraction of a second, dismissing her. Ava felt a hot surge of anger, but before she could speak, Liam did. "Some structures are beyond repair. It's true," he said, his voice calm but cutting. "They're built on rotten foundations, but we don't try to fix those. We tear them down and build something beautiful in their place." He turned to Ava, his gaze softening. "Ava, my love, shall we get some air? The atmosphere in here has become rather toxic." Isabel's smile tightened, a hairline fracture in her perfect facade. She had been prepared for his anger, his silence, his pain. She was not prepared for his indifference, nor for the quiet, formidable woman on his arm. As they walked away, Ava heard Isabel's icy whisper aimed at her back. "Enjoy the view while it lasts, dear. Everything he touches eventually shatters." But the spell was broken. Liam had faced his ghost in front of 100 people and hadn't flinched. And he had called her my love. The gilded cage of his past had been opened, and he had chosen to fly out of it with her. Episode 8, The Proposal That Wasn't. Life began to feel normal, a concept so foreign to Liam it was almost dizzying. Sunday mornings with croissants and newspapers spread across his impossibly clean kitchen floor. Arguments about which film to watch. meeting Ava's family, a chaotic, loving, and loudly approving ordeal that left him emotionally winded but smiling for days. He started leaving things at her flat: a toothbrush, a favorite book, a gray sweater that she secretly loved to wear because it smelled of him. Each item felt like a pledge. One evening, at the engine room, they were putting the final touches on the presentation for the Haven project. The sun was setting, casting long, golden beams through the grimy windows, setting the dust motes dancing like gold leaf. "Ava," Liam said, his voice unusually solemn. She looked up from her laptop. He was holding a small, velvet box. Her heart stopped. The world narrowed to that box. It was too fast, wasn't it? But it felt so right. The setting, the golden light, the culmination of their shared passion project. Yes, her heart screamed. 1,000 times, yes. He opened the box. Nestled inside wasn't a ring. It was a key. Old, heavy, brass key, worn smooth with time. "This is the master key to this place," he said, his eyes holding hers. "The engine room. It's the most real part of me. My sanctuary, my workshop, my heart. I want you to have it. Always. No matter what happens between us. This place is yours. Because you brought the music back." Ava's breath caught. The proposal that wasn't a proposal felt infinitely more profound, more than any ring could ever be. It wasn't a question about the future. It was an offering of his entire present, his past, and his soul. Tears streamed down her face as she took the key. It was warm from his hand. "It's the most beautiful thing anyone has ever given me," she whispered. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she were the most fragile and precious thing he'd ever designed. In that moment, surrounded by their shared dream, the key felt heavier and more significant than any diamond. It was the key to him. Episode 9, The Shadow in the Blueprints. The triumph of the key was short-lived. The next day, Liam was gone. No calls, no texts. His phone went straight to voicemail. Fear, cold and sharp, coiled in Ava's stomach. This wasn't like the dinner. This felt different, darker. After 24 hours of frantic worry, she used the key. The engine room was dark and cold. On his main drafting table, under the weight of a steel ruler, lay a set of blueprints she hadn't seen before. They weren't for the Haven. They were for a private house, a stark, minimalist, fortress-like structure on a remote cliff edge. And scrawled across the front, in Liam's precise handwriting, was a title: The Croft Project. Ava's blood ran cold. Croft. Why was he designing a house for her? Her phone buzzed, making her jump. It was an unknown number, but she knew with a sickening certainty who it was. "Ava." Isabel's voice was smooth as poisoned honey. "I see you've found his little retreat. Charming, isn't it? So industrial. What have you done to him?" Ava demanded, her voice shaking. "Done? My dear, I've given him a purpose, a chance at true closure. He's finally agreed to build my new home. A masterpiece, he says. It seems he's finally ready to move on from the past, and from all the temporary distractions in it." "He would never work for you," Ava spat. "People do surprising things when faced with certain truths," Isabel replied lightly. "Ask him about the structural instability report for the Haven project. Ask him who holds the note on the land it's being built on. Every man has his price, Ava. Even your noble Liam. His price is his precious Haven. And I just bought it." The line went dead. Ava sank into a chair, the world spinning. The Haven wasn't just a project. It was his redemption. And Isabel was holding it hostage. Liam had withdrawn to protect it, to protect her from this battle. He was back in his fortress, alone, because he thought he had to fight the dragon by himself. But Ava wasn't a damsel in distress. She was the woman with the key, and she was done waiting in the tower. Episode 10, The Foundation. She found him not at his modern apartment, but at the site of the future Haven Center. He was standing alone in the vast, empty space, staring at the raw earth as the first light of dawn painted the sky. He looked ravaged, as if he hadn't slept in days. He didn't turn as she approached. "You shouldn't be here, Ava." "Stop," she said, her voice firm. "Just stop. I know about Isabel. I know about the land. I know about her proposal." He finally turned, his eyes haunted. "She'll sink the Haven, Ava. She'll tie it up in courts for years until the funding dries up and the community gives up. All because she can. The only way she drops her claim and approves the land transfer is if I do this. If I build her goddamn monument to herself." "So you're going to let her win?" Ava challenged, walking right up to him. "You're going to become her personal architect? You think that's going to make her stop? She'll own you, Liam. This is what she's always wanted." "What choice do I have?" he roared, the sound echoing in the emptiness. "This project is everything. It's for them, for my parents, for us. It's the one good, pure thing I'm doing." "No," Ava said softly, placing a hand on his chest, over his heart. "It's not. We are the good, pure thing you're doing. This project is brick and mortar. We are the foundation, and foundations are meant to be built on, not sacrificed." She reached into her pocket and pulled out the heavy brass key, holding it up between them. "You gave me this. You gave me your heart. That means we fight our battles together. You don't get to retreat and play the martyr. It's insulting." A strange, choked sound escaped him, half sob, half laugh. The fight drained out of him, replaced by a weary, overwhelming love. "What do we do?" he whispered, resting his forehead against hers. "We fight smarter," she said, a determined glint in her eye. "We don't have her money, but we have something she doesn't. We have the truth, and we have each other. Now take me home, Thorn. We have a war to plan." As the sun rose fully, illuminating the land where a haven was meant to be built, Liam took her hand. The battle ahead was terrifying, but for the first time since he'd lost everything, he wasn't standing on shaky ground. He was standing on a foundation that was, at long last, unbreakable. Episode 11, The War Room. Home turned out to be the engine room. It was no longer a studio. It was a war room. The inspiration boards were gone, replaced by timelines, maps of Isabel Croft's connections, and printouts of legal documents. Ava, with her designer's strategic mind, led the charge. "She buys loyalty, but she doesn't create it," she said, circling a name on a whiteboard. "Lord Harrington, the head of the planning committee. He's in her pocket because she funds his pet projects. But he's also a notorious stickler for heritage preservation." Liam watched her, a mix of awe and grim determination on his face. Isabel's new house is a monument to modernism. It would stick out on that coastline like a sore thumb. "Exactly," Ava said, a sharp smile on her lips. "We don't attack her directly. We make her project toxic. We leak the initial designs to the right heritage groups. We make Lord Harrington's life miserable if he approves it." "It's a gamble," Liam argued, running a hand through his hair. "If she finds out it's us." "Let her," Ava countered, her voice steady. "She's playing chess with money and influence. We're playing Go. We're surrounding her, slowly using her own weight against her. While she's busy fighting off heritage activists, she won't have the bandwidth to sabotage Haven." For the first time since Isabel's ultimatum, Liam felt a flicker of hope. It wasn't a brute force solution. It was elegant, clever. It was their style. He walked over to the whiteboard and picked up a marker. Then we add pressure here, he said, pointing to another name. Her brother, Julian. He's the one who manages the family's holdings. He's always hated the negative press she brings. If we can make this project seem like a PR nightmare waiting to happen. They worked through the night, a united front. The key to the engine room, now a symbol of their shared defense, lay on the table between them. The battle was no longer Liam's alone. It was theirs. Episode 12, The Uninvited Guest. Their strategy began to bear fruit. A prominent heritage society filed a formal complaint against the Croft Cliffside project, citing its visually disruptive and historically insensitive design. Lord Harrington was suddenly unavailable for Isabel's calls. Liam, feeling a surge of confidence, decided it was time to reclaim his life. He organized a small, private dinner party at his apartment for a few trusted colleagues and Ava. It was a declaration of normalcy, a flag planted on the hill of their newfound peace. The evening was a success. The wine flowed, laughter echoed in the minimalist space, and for a few hours, the shadow of Isabel felt distant. Ava was in her element, discussing public art installations with a gallery owner, her hand resting comfortably on Liam's arm. And then the intercom buzzed. Liam, thinking it was the dessert delivery, answered casually. The voice that crackled through the speaker was like shattered glass. Liam, darling, I was in the neighborhood. Aren't you going to invite me up? The blood drained from Liam's face. The room fell silent. Ava's grip on his arm tightened. Isabel didn't wait for an answer. A moment later, the elevator pinged, and she stepped out, as impeccably dressed as ever, a bottle of vintage Dom Perignon in her hand. The party seems to be in full swing, she purred, her eyes sweeping the room and landing on Ava with predatory interest. I thought I'd bring some real champagne. She walked in as if she owned the place, which, in a way, Ava realized with a sickening jolt. She seemed to believe she did. She knew the layout, the art, the silence of the man who stood frozen at its center. I see you've redecorated, she said, trailing a finger along a bookshelf. It's less personal. Good. Sentimentality is a weakness. Liam found his voice, low and dangerous. Get out, Isabel. Or what, Liam? She asked, turning to face him, her smile a razor's edge. You'll call the police? And tell them what? That your parents' oldest family friend stopped by for a drink? It would look so ungrateful. Her eyes flicked to Ava. Especially after I've been so generous with my latest architectural commission. The threat was veiled but clear. Play along or Haven is dust. Ava watched the scene, her heart pounding not with fear, but with a cold, clear rage. She saw the trap. She saw Liam cornered in his own home. And she saw the one thing Isabel had not accounted for, her. Actually, Ava said, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. She stepped forward, taking the champagne bottle from Isabel's hand. 1947. A good year, but it's a bit gauche to bring your own bottle to a party you weren't invited to. Don't you think? It reeks of desperation. Isabel's smile froze. No one spoke to her like that. Ava walked to the intercom and pressed the button for the concierge. James? We have an uninvited guest attempting to harass Mr. Thorne. Could you please send someone up to escort her out? Thank you. She turned back to a speechless Isabel. The police won't be necessary. The building security will suffice. I think you know the way out. For a long moment, Isabel just stared at her, a new, grudging respect in her cold eyes. The pawn had just checkmated the queen. Without another word, she turned and stepped back into the elevator, the doors closing on her icy mask of composure. The room erupted in relieved whispers. Liam pulled Ava into a fierce embrace. "You were magnificent," he whispered into her hair. "I told you," she whispered back. "We fight together." Episode 13. The Sacrifice. The confrontation galvanized them. The war room became a hive of activity. But Isabel was not one to retreat. Her retaliation was swift and brutal. Liam received a formal notice. The land for the Haven project, which was held in a complex trust, was being pulled from the deal. Isabel's brother, citing potential legal complications and reputational risk, had exercised a clause that none of Liam's lawyers had deemed significant. The Haven project was officially dead. Liam was destroyed. He sat in the engine room, staring at the magnificent model in the center, a monument to a future that would never exist. All the fight drained out of him. "This is it," he said, his voice hollow. "She wins. I can't beat her. She has infinite resources and a bottomless capacity for cruelty." Ava knelt before him, taking his hands. "No. This is just a setback. We'll find another location. We'll rally the community. She'll just do it again, Ava," he exploded, pulling his hands away. "Don't you see? This will never end. As long as I'm fighting her, everything I care about is a target." "You are a target." The air went cold. "What are you saying, Liam?" He stood up, his back to her, a silhouette of defeat. "I'm saying I have to build her damn house." Ava felt as if the floor had vanished beneath her. "No, you can't. You can't give her that victory. You can't let her own your talent, your soul. It's not about victory," he shouted, turning to face her, his eyes blazing with a tortured fire. "It's about survival. Yours. If I do this, she gets what she wants. She gets her trophy. And then maybe, just maybe, she'll get bored and leave us alone. It's the only way to protect you, to protect any chance we have at a normal life. So you're sacrificing your integrity to protect me?" Ava's voice was dangerously quiet. "You think I want a life built on that kind of sacrifice? A life where you come home to me every night, smelling of her perfume and your own self-loathing? It's the only way," he insisted, a desperate plea in his eyes. Ava stood up, her own tears now dry, replaced by a profound, heartbreaking clarity. "No, Liam. It's the easy way, the coward's way. You're not building a wall to protect me. You're building a prison for yourself and asking me to live in it with you." She took the heavy brass key from her pocket and placed it gently on the table next to the doomed model of Haven. "I won't," she whispered. "I love you too much to watch you destroy yourself." And before he could say another word, she turned and walked out of the engine room, leaving him alone with his sacrifice and the echoing sound of her final, devastating truth. Episode 14. The Hollow Victory. The silence in Ava's flat was absolute. The first day, she cried. The second, she raged. The third, she just felt numb. She deleted his number, blocked his email, but she couldn't block the memory of his face, twisted in agony as he chose the path of surrender. Meanwhile, Liam plunged into the abyss. He signed the contract with Isabel. The Croft project began. He moved through the motions like a ghost, his designs for her house technically brilliant but utterly soulless, a cold, perfect shell. It was the greatest professional failure of his life, and he was doing it with his eyes wide open. Isabel was triumphant. She visited the cliffside site daily, offering condescending suggestions, basking in her victory. But she soon discovered a hollow truth. A defeated Liam was a boring Liam. His fire, his resistance, his pain, that was what had fueled her obsession. Now he was just a skilled contractor. The thrill was gone. One evening, she found him at the site, staring out at the churning sea. It's not as satisfying as I'd hoped, she mused, coming to stand beside him. You're broken. There's no sport in it anymore. Liam didn't look at her. You got what you wanted. Did I? She asked, a strange note of disappointment in her voice. I wanted you to see, to acknowledge that I hold the power, that your parents' world, your world, is fragile. But you just gave up. That girl was right. You are a coward. Her words should have stung, but they didn't. They were just an echo of the truth Ava had already spoken. He was a coward. He had chosen what he thought was safety over love, and in doing so, he had lost everything that made him feel alive. He turned and walked away from her, leaving her standing alone in her half-built, hollow victory. The war was over. Isabel had won. And for the first time, Liam understood that her victory was as empty and meaningless as the house he was building for her. Episode 15. The Blueprint of Hope. 2 months passed. Ava threw herself into her work, taking on new projects, but her heart wasn't in it. The world had lost its color. She avoided the parts of the city that reminded her of him, but London, it seemed, was a map of their love story. One Saturday, she was helping her mother clear out the family's cluttered garage. Dust motes danced in the sunlight, and the air smelled of old memories and motor oil. As she moved a stack of old boxes, one toppled over, spilling its contents across the concrete floor. Among her childhood drawings and schoolbooks, a large rolled-up sheet of paper tied with a familiar blue ribbon caught her eye. Her heart skipped a beat. With trembling hands, she untied it and unrolled it. It wasn't one of her old drawings. It was an architectural blueprint. At the top, in Liam's unmistakable handwriting, was a title, Haven Revised. 4AR. It was a new design, more beautiful, more innovative, more heartfelt than the original. He had incorporated all her ideas, every late-night conversation they'd had in the engine room. Notes were scribbled in the margins in his hand. Ava's garden concept, expand here. Lighting as per A's vision for the community hall. And at the very bottom, a single line, written not as an architect, but as a man. You were the foundation. I was the fool who forgot. I'm so sorry.
LT.
Tears streamed down Ava's face, not of sadness, but of a painful, soaring hope. He hadn't given up. Even in his despair, he had been redrawing their dream. He had been fighting the only way he knew how, with his pencil, with his heart. He hadn't sent it to her. He hadn't called. He had simply left it here, in a place he knew she would eventually find it. A silent message in a bottle cast upon the shores of their past. It wasn't a plea. It was a testament. Promise. Ava rolled up the blueprint, holding it close to her chest. The war wasn't over. It had just entered a new phase. And this time, she knew he wouldn't be fighting alone. He had just given her the new battle plans. Episode 16. The Reckoning. Ava didn't call. She didn't text. She arrived at the cliffside construction site at dawn, the revised Haven blueprint tucked under her arm. The wind whipped her hair, and the sound of the waves crashing below was a roar of defiance. She found Liam alone, standing before the skeletal frame of Isabel's house. He was staring at the steel beams as if they were the bars of his own prison. He looked thinner, older, the weight of his compromise etched into his face. He turned, and seeing her, his breath hitched. Shock, hope, and shame warred in his eyes. Ava, he breathed. You shouldn't be here. I found your message, she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. She unrolled the blueprint, holding it up against the grim skeleton of the Croft house. The two structures, one of hope and one of despair, stood in stark contrast. You built the wrong one, Liam. He flinched. I had to protect. You protected nothing. She cut him off, her voice rising above the wind. You built her a monument to her own toxicity, and you let our dream die. But you didn't let it die, did you? You redrew it. You made it better. So which one is the real you, Liam? The man who builds cages, or the man who designs havens? Before he could answer, a sleek black car pulled up. Isabel emerged, her sharp eyes taking in the scene with immediate fury. What is this? A lover's reunion on my property? How touching. Ava didn't back down. She turned to face the woman, the blueprint held like a shield. It's over, Isabel. He's not finishing your house. Isabel let out a cold, brittle laugh. The contract is signed. The land for his little pet project is gone. He has no choice. He always has a choice, Ava said, her gaze locking with Liam's. And so do I. Liam looked from Ava's determined face to Isabel's triumphant sneer, and then to the hollow shell of the house. He saw it all with painful clarity. A future of soul-crushing compliance, or a leap of faith into the unknown with the woman who had never stopped believing in him. He walked to a nearby generator powering the site tools and threw the main switch. The low hum of electricity died, plunging the site into a sudden, profound silence, broken only by the sea. What are you doing? Isabel demanded, her composure cracking. I'm exercising the termination clause, Liam said, his voice stronger than it had been in months. I'll pay the penalty. I'll face the lawsuit. But I am not building another inch of this tomb. You'll be ruined, Isabel shrieked. Maybe, Liam said, his eyes never leaving Ava's. But I'll be free, and I'll have my integrity. And her, that's a fortune you can never understand. He walked away from the half-built house, away from Isabel's sputtering rage, and straight to Ava. He didn't touch her, just stood before her, his entire being a question. I'm so sorry, he whispered, for everything. Ava looked at the man who had finally torn down his own walls. She saw the architect, the warrior, the partner she had fallen in love with. She slowly rolled up the blueprint. Don't be sorry, she said, a single tear tracing a path through the dust on her cheek. Be better. Let's go build the right one. Episode 17, The Groundbreaking. They didn't find another location. They fought for the original one. Armed with Liam's new, even more brilliant design and Ava's powerful community outreach, they became a cause célèbre. The story of the renowned architect, the manipulative socialite, and the community garden project she tried to kill was too compelling for the press to ignore. Isabel's brother, seeing the tidal wave of bad PR and public sympathy stacked against them, quietly intervened. The land for the Haven project was suddenly and permanently donated to the community trust, free and clear. The groundbreaking ceremony was nothing like the glamorous galas Liam was used to. It was held on a bright, windy day, filled with families, local children with tiny shovels, and the smell of earth and hope. Ava stood beside Liam, their hands covered in dirt as they turned the first ceremonial sod together. There were no grand speeches, just the shared, profound understanding of the battle they had won, not just against Isabel, but against the ghosts of their own pasts. As the crowd cheered and the first excavators moved in, Liam turned to Ava. He reached into his pocket, but this time it wasn't a key. It was a simple, unadorned silver band. It's not a lock or a key this time, he said, his voice thick with emotion. It's a circle. No beginning, no end. Just us. Ava Reed, will you build a life with me? Will you marry me? Ava looked at the ring, then at the bustling site, the tangible proof of their love and resilience. She looked into the eyes of the man who had learned to fight for himself and for her. Yes, she said, her smile brighter than the sun. On one condition. Anything, She grinned, wiping a smudge of dirt from his cheek. We designed the house together. Liam laughed, a real, free, joyful sound he thought he'd lost forever. He slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her, as the sounds of construction, the sounds of their future, began to rise around them. Finale, The Haven. 5 years later, The Haven was more than a community center. It was the vibrant, beating heart of the neighborhood. On a warm summer evening, the sound of a piano, a slightly out-of-tune upright, drifted from the music room, mingling with the laughter of children in the garden Ava had designed. In the heart of the building, in Liam's office overlooking the central courtyard, a small, personal ceremony was taking place. It wasn't their wedding. That had been a joyous, chaotic affair with Ava's entire family the year before. This was a different kind of dedication. Liam held their 2-year-old daughter, Elara, on his hip. Ava stood beside them, her hand resting on his back. They were all looking at a simple, polished brass plaque mounted on the wall. It wasn't engraved with a name or a date. It held a single, 3-dimensional object, encased in resin for preservation. An old, tarnished key. Below it, the inscription read, "For every ending that is a beginning. For every lock there is a key. For every soul a haven. Our silent agreement, forever." Elara reached a chubby hand towards the plaque, babbling. Liam caught her fingers and kissed them. "She'll ask about it one day," Ava said softly, leaning her head on his shoulder. "And we'll tell her," Liam replied, his voice full of a quiet, unshakable peace. "We'll tell her that love isn't about finding a perfect person. It's about seeing an imperfect person perfectly. It's about showing up in the rain with an umbrella and having the courage to walk through the storm together." He looked around the room, at the life they had built from the ruins of their past, at the woman who was his foundation, at the child who was their future. "And we'll tell her," he whispered, his eyes meeting Ava's, "that the most beautiful structures aren't made of steel and glass. They are built on forgiveness, on second chances, and on a silent agreement to never, ever give up." Outside, the sun set over London, casting the Haven in a golden light. It was more than a building. It was a promise kept, a battle won, a love story built to last. The end.